Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So this is my second channel, Bibliophile Hermit. Welcome, welcome. We are in book 3 now of St. Augustine's Confessions. And what I like about this one is it has a lot of good rhetoric. And I feel that by reading him, we learn to express ourselves more beautifully. I already read this, but we're going to refresh it and I'm going to give my thoughts with you about it. Paragraph 1. I went to Carthage, where I found myself in the midst of a hissing cauldron of lust. Now this imagery of a cauldron is like a big black cast iron bowl that historically has been associated with witches. Okay? They would brew their potions and whatnot in it. So when he says hissing, it's like it's so hot that it's making noise. And it's a distracting noise, kind of like how you have your tea kettle, if you have the kind that whistle, that it just won't let you not pay attention to it. So when he describes Carthage as a bubbling lust cauldron that won't stop hissing, you can visualize in your mind the amount of temptations he was surrounded by. I had not yet fallen in love, but I was in love with the idea of it. Oh, aren't we all? And this feeling that something was missing made me despise myself for not being more anxious to satisfy the need. So he wanted to have a relationship, and he was disappointed in himself that he didn't do enough to seek out a remedy for that. I began to look around for some object for my love, since I badly wanted to love something. I had no liking for the safe path without pitfalls. So here, this is very interesting because you get into the psychology of him. I had no liking for this safe path without pitfalls. So the excitement of challenges, the excitement of not having smoothness. Pitfalls make you stumble, make you get up again, you strategize. Now, this reflects his kind of rambunctious young mindset. Because I think as you mature, you kind of want the safe path. It's not that you avoid problems, but rather you don't actively go about seeking them out. For although my real need was for you, my God, who are the food of the soul, I was not aware of this hunger. I felt no need for the food that does not perish. Now this is interesting. The food that does not perish is what comes from God, he contends. Because it feeds the soul consistently, and it will never have an expiration date, because it's always coming forth. It's a very beautiful way of putting it, isn't it? Not because I had my fill of it, but because the more I was starved of it, the less palatable it seemed. Because of this, my soul fell sick. It broke out in ulcers and looked about desperately for some material, worldly means of relieving the itch. Now notice this. He's looking about desperately. He needs something to relieve that kind of urge. And describe it as an itch is very apt, because if you've ever gotten bitten by a bug and it just itches and you put medicine on it and it just won't stop, it's so infuriating to the point where you just want to cut that piece of skin off. It is very difficult when something has an itch, and so he's really giving us this descriptive language so we can try to connect with how he's feeling, which they caused. But material things which have no soul could not be true objects for my love. To love and to have my love returned was my heart's desire. I think that's all of ours. To love someone who loves you back. Having a one-sided love arrangement where someone loves you, you don't love them, or you love them and they don't love you, it's pretty brutal. So I think we all can connect with St. Augustine when he talks about that. It's a very human element to our existence on earth. And it would be all the sweeter if I could also enjoy the body of the one who loved me. Yeah, I mean, Isn't that the dream of us all? Truly it is. To love someone who loves you, and to enjoy the body of someone who truly loves you. So I muddy the stream of friendship with the filth of lewdness. Now this is a really interesting way of describing it. The stream of friendship with the filth of lewdness. Here, he's really showing you how a beautiful clear stream, so pure you could drink from it, it brings pleasure to the eyes, was polluted through lewdness. Being lewd is not something pure. It mucks up the waters. And so, he really is urging us to not be lewd, and to not like lewdness, and that what is lewd is not pure. I think we all can agree with that. Unless you're a liberal. And clouded its clear waters with the hell's black river of lust. Black river of lust versus the pure stream of friendship. Very descriptive language here. Because lust, you can't see through it. Lust is this horrible temporary demon that just suffocates you and tries to trap you constantly. And that's why those who push lust upon people who are fighting it are really, as he would put it, muddying up the stream of friendship. And yet, in spite of its rank depravity, I was vain enough to have ambitions of cutting a fine figure in the world. Now here I feel kind of bad for him, because it's to do something in vain can seem futile, yes, but ambition to have a fine figure in the world, to make his mark upon it, a lot of good can come from that. But again, we look at the intention of why someone is doing it. Is it for the sake of the cutting the fine figure, or for the sake of spreading knowledge, or what's the mode you're going about it, and what outcome do you want? And is it self-serving, or is it serving others, or a mix of both? Much to examine. But here you can see how he's really regulating himself and holding himself accountable. I also fell in love, which was a snare of my own choosing. A snare of my own choosing. My God of mercy. So he calls God, God of mercy. We, as well as Muslims, call Allah merciful, the most merciful. How good you were to me, for you mixed much bitterness in that cup of pleasure. So here he's thanking God for disturbing that pleasure cup, making it not as alluring, cutting off that lust, helping him to break free. My love was returned and finally shackled me in the bonds of its consummation. In the midst of my joy, I was caught up in the coils of trouble. Midst of joy, caught up in the coils of trouble. Now, a coil, it spirals around. If you get caught in that, it's hard to escape. If you imagine yourself inside a giant coil, a slinky, and it's wrapped around you, and you gotta like bend it off the top of you to escape from it. It's really binding, and it goes from head to toe and restricts your movement. So here he's showing us very poetically how, while he was in his joy, it was also restricting him more than what he realized. For I was lashed with the cruel, fiery rods of jealousy and suspicion, fear, anger, and quarrels. That's true. You know, he got the love he wanted, and the fiery rods of jealousy come out. If you really love someone, there is that fiery rod of jealousy that comes out. It does really feel like that. It's very unique in that way. Suspicion, how when you suspect something of your partner, it can get pretty out of hand. But we as Muslims are told not to have arbitrary suspicions, and we must look for raw evidence. But not look for raw evidence for the sake of suspicious aims, but only when there is enough evidence to cause it to be so. 2. I was much attracted by the theater, because the plays reflected my own unhappy plight and were tinder to my fire. I think we all can agree with that. A little indulging and something you can have catharsis with. What is it that men enjoy feeling sad at the sight of a tragedy? Yeah, I do. I really love tragedy. I really love Greek tragedies. I like stories of suffering people overcame or just where they don't succeed at all. Because I appreciate what I have. I understand what he's saying. And suffering on the stage, although they would be most unhappy if they had to endure the same fate themselves. Aristotle spoke about this. The mimesis and catharsis. And I think it's very potent. The Greeks had a good insight into tragedy. Yet they watched the plays because they hoped to be made to feel sad. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I have to admit I'm the same. Yes. And the feeling of sorrow is what they enjoy. Yeah, temporarily, because it's a different type of sorrow. It's not my own. Rather, this sort of empathy that comes from the fictional character. Yes. What a miserable delirium this is. I guess you could look at it that way. The more a man is subject to such suffering himself, the more easily he is moved by it. In the theater, yes, yeah. You connect with the character. When you see them struggle, and you yourself have struggled, you feel a sense of connection. Yet, when he himself suffers, we call it misery. Well, the character is miserable as well, but there's a disconnection there of safety because you perceive that it's only happening to them, not to you. And you kind of live vicariously through them in this artificial hybrid way, which allows you to have a safety zone, but also experience the emotions to a degree. When he suffers out of sympathy with others, we call it pity. But what sort of pity can we really feel for an imaginary scene on stage? I mean, true, it may not be as potent of pity as seeing it live, but it can evoke thoughts, break you out of your monotony, get you to try to analyze what it would be like to live in someone else's shoes. At least that's what good actors do. They portray a character so well that they make you hate them or love them. The audience is not called upon to offer help, but only to feel sorrow. Well, yeah, you can't help because you are the spectator, and it's an artificial scene. Whereas if it was something real happening, then duty and honor would require that you do something. And the more they are pained, the more they applaud the author, yes. Why? Because if you can move my emotions, I think you did a good job. Something funny is, in Season 8 of Game of Thrones, the finale, when Jon Snow kills Daenerys Targaryen, I did cry. I got sad. Oh, it's so silly to say, but I wanted her to be the queen. You know, I was rooting for her. But she turned into a tyrant and whatnot. I know. Not gonna get into it. But they did a good job. I was mad they ended it that way. But the scene, the ashes and snow falling from the sky, that was just a very interesting scene. Game of Thrones, if you cut out all the useless intimacy scenes and you just went to the acting of the sorrow, of the tragedy, it was brilliant. I like that kind of stuff. And the more they are pained, the more they applaud the author. When this human agony is based on fact, or is simply imaginary, it is acted so badly the audience is not moved to sorrow. They leave the theater in a disgruntled and critical mood. That's true. Whereas if they are made to feel pain, they stay to the end watching happily. This is true, yeah. You want to be satisfied. You want to see something grand, something unique, something that you gained from it, an insight. You seek some type of ending that's satisfactory to where you felt like it was a good use of your time. It's really quite telling. I mean, I like to watch plays and stuff like that. So I see from his perspective and from mine. This shows that sorrow and tears can be enjoyable. Yes, that's true. Of course, everyone wants to be happy, but even if no one likes being sad, it is there just the one exception that, because we enjoy pitying others, we welcome their misfortunes. No, I don't welcome their misfortune. I don't enjoy pitying others, but I don't mind pitying others. Without which, we could not pity them. I mean, I don't want them to have those troubles just so I can pity them. If so, it is because of friendly feelings well up inside us, like the waters of a spring. Well, that's an interesting way to put it, isn't it? Friendly feelings that water up like a spring. But what courses do they water flow? Where do they flow? Why do they trickle away to join that stream of boiling pitch, the hideous flood of lust? Now that's a shift, right? Where... Okay. So, I get what you're saying here, right? We have these streams in us that spring up from the ability to have our emotions extracted from us. Now, he is contending that lust as well can be prompted inside you. This is extremely true. Especially for those of us who struggle to not have lust, sometimes there could be something that just triggers it and you're like, oh. So the ability to just hold that in and to watch out it's not easy. So I get what he's kind of getting at, how the mediums of entertainment can serve in many ways to extract emotions from you. For by their own choice they lose themselves and become absorbed in it. Yeah. It is their choice to get lost in the whirlwind of lust. It's very hard to get out of. They are diverted from their true course and deprived of their original heavenly claim. Yeah, they're not their best selves when they are in that state. And then they come back to their senses and they're not deprived of their original state. But it is a struggle. It's an enigma. It's a test and trial. And an unending one at that humans have to constantly work towards perfecting. What do you think? There's a very interesting section here. I really like him as a writer. You can get inside his mind, makes you think, highly beneficial. What do you think, Pam?